Today we'll be talking about the Hattersley and Davidson three-stage foot pump, sometimes called the multi-stage pump. This is a beautiful looking pump, and we'll be dismantling it and describing how one overhauls it. To dismantle the pump, one needs to first of all take out this front axle here, which is held in with split pins and washers. Then it's necessary to take out these three nuts which hold the three piston rods onto this front spreader plate. When those have been removed, the three piston rods can come free, and we can take out the pistons and look inside and discuss how to maintain it and replace the washers. Now dismantle the pump to show you how its insides look and how we can overhaul it and get it working properly. The first thing we do is to take out the stage 1 piston. This is done by unscrewing the piston backplate here at the top. It comes out very easily, and extracting the piston. And there we see it's a simple cup washer held in place with a large washer and a central screw. Next, the job is to take out the stage 2 piston, which is in the smaller of the three barrels, just underneath here. So we're unscrewing this stage 2 piston, and out it comes, just as the first stage did. And finally, we unscrew and remove the stage 3 piston, which is here in the intermediate sized barrel, and this unscrews like this, and out it comes. Now we've taken the pistons and piston rods out of the barrels, we can discuss how the pump works and what are its basic principles. First of all, on the downstroke, the large cup washer in the stage 1 barrel compresses air towards the bottom of the barrel, and this moves then into the second stage barrel, because at the base of these two barrels there's a small interconnecting hole. So the stage 1 piston compresses air, which is then forced into the stage 2 barrel, and because the stage 2 piston washer is pointing in the opposite direction, that compressed air passes this washer and sits above it in the second stage compression. So at the end of the first downstroke, we have air that's been compressed in the first barrel, transferred into the secondary barrel, and bypasses the cup washer in the reverse direction to sit above the cup washer in the second stage barrel. This then allows, on the upstroke, for this second stage piston to act as an uplift stage, so it pulls the air up and compresses it on the upstroke, and this passes through a small interconnecting hole then into the third stage barrel. And because at this point the third stage piston is at the top of the barrel, that air that's been forced through will have passed that piston and be in the bottom of this barrel. So that enables the third stage of compression to take place when this, on the next downstroke, this piston descends, compresses that air, and drives it out through a non-return valve to the tyre. So there we have the principle of the three-stage compression. Compression in the outer barrel, delivery through a small interconnecting hole to the secondary compression barrel, where an uplift stage takes place, which then transfers the air to the third stage barrel, where a third compression takes place before delivery to the tyre. We mentioned earlier that during pumping, the stage 2 and stage 3 barrels are subject to pressure both in front of and behind the piston heads. So we show the two pistons and piston rods from the stage 2 and stage 3 barrels, and pressure exists both at this point and at this point during pumping. This means that there's the potential of air leaking along the piston rod and out to atmosphere in both cases during pumping. To prevent this, the two piston rods are provided with so-called gland boxes, which are screwed on to the barrel end caps, and these gland boxes are packed with leather washers, well-oiled leather washers. Here we have one top washer and 4 smaller leather washers packed tightly into the gland box housing, and the gland box top screwed down tightly to keep them in place and to keep the sealing. The importance of them being well oiled can't be overestimated, and also the gland box tops, the screw tops, must be continually checked and tightened during pumping to ensure the gland box washers are in place and sealing properly. So here we have the two gland boxes on the stage 2 and stage 3 piston rods, the one at the top showing how it's assembled and the one at the bottom showing how it's disassembled and how the packing goes on inside them. While we're looking at this, we note that there are also 2 fibre washers on the gland boxes which seal when these are screwed into the barrel end caps, and we also have 2 impact washers which prevent metal-to-metal contact between the piston and the barrel end cap at the top of the footstroke. So there we have it, the importance of the gland boxes, and these gland boxes being properly sealed in the stage 2 and stage 3 piston rods to prevent leakage of air out to atmosphere, properly oiled and checked during service. As an alternative to the thin leather washers, one can also use nitrile rubber O-rings, which is an acceptable alternative, measured up to the right size so they fit in the gland box, and of course well oiled at the same time to ensure smooth operation. After dismantling and examining the insides of the pump from a design and a maintenance viewpoint, it's worthwhile now looking in some detail at the aperture, because this is quite interesting, and there are 3 apertures at the back end of the pump, and it's worth examining what goes on here. First of all, the outlet aperture which connects to the connecting hose and therefore onto the pipe fits in this front facing forward aperture here. This is a 1/8 British standard pipe thread, so it's very easy to obtain the hose tail to fit into this. The second aperture you see is the one facing to the front here, and that's housing the one-way valve. You can see the one-way valve below here. It's essentially a ball bearing of 1/4 inch diameter, 6.3 millimeters, held in place by a soft spring and a brass bolt which screws into the aperture to keep the ball bearing in place with the spring in front of it. Maintenance of the non-return valve is quite important. It needs to be working properly for the pump to work. It prevents backflow from the air from the tyre into the pump, and it acts as a safety valve in case of overpressure and preventing large pressures getting back into the pump. From a maintenance viewpoint, if the ball bearing is pitted or damaged in any way, it simply needs replacing. The spring is usually okay, but you can find small soft springs like this to fit if you need to replace it. And the brass bolt has a leather or fibre washer behind it to help seal. Finally, at the outlet aperture, we have at the top here a board-on tube pressure gauge. This is the one that's come off the pump in beautiful condition, with a centre back entry point, with again a 1/8 BSPP thread. Now, the problem with these board-on tube dial gauges is that they are very delicate, and if one is not working, it's really often quite difficult to mend it. The most common problem is that the linkages inside have come apart. If you're lucky, you can get inside, get the front off and repair one of the linkages, maybe with a small piece of wire, but a very delicate operation. So if the board-on tube dial gauge is not working, one has two options. One can replace it with a pressure test valve, a 1/8 BSP pressure test valve, which allows pressure to be taken without disconnecting from the tyre. But one can also obtain modern back entry pressure gauges like this one, not quite so attractive as the original, but all very useful and can be fitted easily. These are 1/8 BSPP threads, so one has some options if one has a broken dial gauge and needs to replace it. Not all the multi-stage pumps had this dial gauge. Some just had the aperture blanked off here, and pressure had to be taken using a pressure test gauge as normal in other pumps. So there we have the details of the outlet aperture of the pump. Quite interesting, needs cleaning out, and the one-way valve needs examining carefully to ensure that it's working properly, and if necessary replace the parts. Cleaning the seating inside there for the ball bearing to sit on with a cotton bud and some petrol or whatever is also a useful thing to do when you've got it all apart. We've now almost completed our story about dismantling and overhauling the multi-stage foot pump, but as you can see, it's not been a full dismantling job. The three barrels are still attached at the back axle here, and also the springs are still in place on the front axle. Both of these can be easily taken off. The axles are just held there with split pins and washers at the back, and there is this wire closing catch which engages with the foot pedal to keep the pump in a closed position. So that axle can easily be removed, which allows the triple barreled arrangement there to be taken off clear from the frame. A similar story for the front springs. Cross axle held with split pins and washers can be easily removed, which then allows the springs to be replaced if necessary. These are a brand new pair of springs on this one, which I've fitted. I do have many spare sets, so if your particular pump has got a broken spring, it's usually the best practice to replace both springs so they're both equally strong. They're very simple torsion springs with straight arms at the back resting on the horizontal frame, and arms at the front resting on a crossbar on the foot pedal arms. So those are the things to look at from a dismantling viewpoint near the end of the pump. And now I've finished the dismantling and the description of the pump. My main job is now to spend some time putting it all together again.